Ever wondered what happens when a rookie cop tries to flex on the wrong black army colonel? 1 second, he's pulling you over for a fake taillight. The next, his entire power trip is destroyed by the Pentagon. This is the kind of extreme racism that spirals out of control in seconds, and the consequences are mind-blowing. Before we start the story, tell me, where are you watching from? And if these stories speak to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Darius Hunter, a black army colonel, was cruising down a quiet suburban street in his black SUV, sunlight bouncing off the hood, coffee in hand, finishing a stack of military reports on his tablet. His mind was already on the day's missions, strategy calls, and the paperwork mountain waiting at the base. He rolled down the window just a crack for ventilation, music playing low, letting the morning settle around him. Life felt normal, calm, until flashing red and blue lights popped up in his rearview mirror, slicing through the calm like a siren screaming trouble. Rookie cop Ryan Collins, 28, white, tactical uniform crisp and polished, smirk stretched across his face, waved him over. Smirk wasn't just arrogance. It was the kind of entitlement that screams, "I can make your life miserable, and there's nothing you can do about it." Collins muttered something about a broken taillight, the kind of fake excuse rookies use when they feel their ego needs validation. Darius eased his SUV to the curb, hands fully visible, every muscle tense, heart rate climbing just a notch. He knew the game. He could feel the microsecond danger in every moment. Collins stomped up to the SUV, chest puffed out, barking commands like he was delivering ultimatums from the heavens. "Step out of the vehicle. Hands on the wheel. Now." Each word dripped with bias, authority, and unearned power. His eyes darted over Darius from head to toe, like scanning for any excuse to act out his aggression. His partner, Ethan Brooks, 32, white, tactical uniform, leaned casually against the cruiser, arms crossed, smirking. He clearly found amusement in the situation, enjoying the racial dynamic. The thought of a black army colonel talking back clearly tickled him. Their body language screamed arrogance, entitlement, and pure prejudice. Darius kept his hands visible, controlled, but inside, his mind raced. Stay calm. Control the narrative. Don't give him an excuse. Remember your rights. Don't flinch. Assess every microexpression, every twitch of Collins' fingers, every shallow breath, every narrowing of the rookie's eyes screamed potential escalation. Brooks chuckled low under his breath, looking at Darius like he was already guilty simply for existing in that moment. The tension hung thick in the air. Passers-by slowed, whispered, glanced nervously. Kids clung to their parents. Dogs barked. Traffic hummed quietly in the background. Every small noise amplified the moment. The creak of the SUV door, the rustle of leaves in the morning breeze, the distant honk of a car. It all felt magnified, echoing the dangerous potential of this encounter. Darius scanned everything. Collins's stance, Brooks's amusement, the street itself. Every microsecond mattered. He could feel the rookie's fingers twitching toward the taser, the way his jaw tightened with impatience, the subtle shift of weight signaling readiness to escalate. Collins's smirk was a mask for the racial prejudice running wild in his mind, and Darius felt it like static electricity in the air. Darius exhaled slowly, letting calm authority radiate from every movement. He subtly shifted his body, hands on the wheel, head level, eyes locking with Collins. Extreme racism met unshakable discipline. Every second, the tension mounted, Collins leaned closer, voice rising, slipping threats between words. Brooks chuckled again, eyes glinting with arrogant amusement. The street itself seemed to tense up, pedestrians freezing mid-step, sensing the collision of ignorance and authority. Inside Darius, a calculated storm brewed. I know my rights. I know my power. I know who I am. I will not flinch. I will not give in. His posture radiated confidence and control, even as Collins' aggression surged. Every muscle, every nerve, every breath poised for action or reaction. Extreme racism in the form of a rookie cop's power trip met the steady, disciplined presence of a black army colonel. Minutes stretched like hours. The sun cast sharp shadows across the street, reflecting off Collins' smirk and Brooks' amused gaze. Darius felt the weight of history, of systemic bias, of countless others who'd faced similar threats without authority to respond. But he was different. He had the rank, the training, and the calm to handle this. Every micro-expression from the officers was cataloged in his mind, every nuance of tone, stance, and threat noted, ready for any escalation. Finally, a distant siren, a faint bark of a dog, a honk from a passing vehicle, small triggers that made the rookie flinch slightly, revealing the gap between his arrogance and capability. Darius felt it, every little slip, every subtle sign. He exhaled again, slow, controlled, letting the morning stretch around him, eyes locked on Collins, hands steady, aura commanding. Extreme racism was on full display, but so was disciplined authority. And everyone on that quiet suburban street, whether they knew it or not, was about to witness a collision of ignorance and power that would escalate beyond their imagination. Darius Hunter barely moved a muscle as Ryan Collins leaned closer, chest practically pressing against the SUV window. Collins' voice cracked with impatience and barely hidden hostility. "Step out of the vehicle, now!" he barked again, this time more aggressive, like he was trying to assert dominance over someone he saw as inferior. His partner, Ethan Brooks, 32, white, tactical uniform, neat and polished, stood behind him, smirking, arms crossed, clearly entertained by the rookie's over-the-top intimidation tactics. Every inch of their posture screamed entitlement, arrogance, and unchecked racial bias. Darius remained calm, hands firmly on the wheel, posture relaxed yet commanding, eyes level and locked onto Collins. Inside, his mind raced, analyzing every micro-expression, every twitch, every sign that these cops might escalate further. Stay calm. Don't give him an excuse. Control the narrative. Use your authority. He knew Collins had no clue who he was messing with. A highly trained Army colonel, disciplined, composed, and more than capable of handling any physical confrontation. Collins' fingers twitched near his taser. "I said step out of the car!" he shouted again, voice raising an octave, barely containing his frustration. Brooks chuckled quietly, eyes scanning Darius like he was some kind of guilty suspect for existing in the wrong skin color. Collins' gaze hardened, the rookie cop's ignorance wrapped in pure bias, each movement fueled by a mix of fear, entitlement, and racial prejudice. Darius slowly adjusted his seatbelt, subtly moving his right hand closer to his lap, signaling readiness without aggression. His aura radiated calm authority, forcing the cops to hesitate for just a fraction of a second. That split second stretched the tension like elastic. Collins, visibly irritated, grabbed his radio, muttering for backup, his voice laced with barely hidden contempt. Brooks continued smirking, clearly enjoying the show, unaware that the situation was about to shift entirely. Pedestrians slowed even more, a few pulling their kids closer, some freezing mid-step. The street, quiet just moments ago, now seemed to vibrate with tension. Darius could feel the oppressive weight of bias pressing down on him, the kind that had existed for generations, the kind that had led to countless injustices. He exhaled slowly, letting calm authority flow through every movement, ready to respond without escalating unnecessarily. Collins leaned closer to the window again, his face inches from Darius's. "Hands where I can see them," he barked, the rookie's impatience palpable. Darius's eyes didn't flinch. They locked on Collins, calm, steady, assertive. "I'm not the one who needs to prove anything. You're the one overstepping." The extreme racism in Collins's tone and stance was undeniable, every word a display of bias and entitlement. Brooks stepped a little forward, smirk fading slightly as he noticed the complete composure of Darius. The rookie cop, sensing this authority, but unwilling to back down, reached for his pepper spray holster. The tension escalated to a breaking point. Passers-by gasped, some pulled out phones, some whispered urgently. Every small sound, the rustle of a plastic bag, the distant car horn, felt magnified, echoing the danger of the moment. Darius shifted slightly, opening the car door just enough to signal readiness to exit if forced, calm yet prepared for any move Collins or Brooks made. "You want to escalate? Fine, but you won't catch me off guard." Collins' hand hovered over the taser, his finger twitching nervously. Brooks stepped closer, still grinning, but now you could see the first signs of doubt. Extreme racism, entitlement, and ignorance met unshakable discipline and authority. Every microsecond seemed to stretch, every glance a potential trigger. The street itself felt heavy, charged with anticipation. Darius Hunter, Black Army Colonel, calm, measured, aware of every movement, every word, every possibility, stood at the center of a storm that was about to spiral beyond the rookie cop's control. Darius Hunter, calm as ever, could feel the rookie cop Ryan Collins' impatience boiling over, every twitch, every shallow breath, every glare screaming a racial bias that refused to hide. Collins' partner, Ethan Brooks, still smirking, took a step closer, looming over the SUV like they had the right to dominate anyone in sight. The morning sun reflected harshly off Collins' polished uniform, highlighting the arrogance etched into his smirk, the misplaced sense of control. Brooks, arms crossed, smirk fading slightly as he began sensing Darius's unwavering composure. "Step out now, hands visible," Collins barked, leaning even closer, his face inches from Darius's, nostrils flaring, eyes narrowing with barely contained frustration. Each word dripped with racial prejudice, the kind that assumes authority over someone simply because they're black. Darius stayed calm, hands on the wheel, his posture commanding yet relaxed, aura radiating authority. Inside, his mind raced, cataloging every micro-expression, every subtle movement from Collins and Brooks. This guy thinks he's untouchable. He has no clue who he's messing with. Every twitch, every word, note it all. Stay calm. Control the moment. Collins reached for his taser, the metal glinting in the sunlight. The rookie's hands shook slightly, betraying his arrogance with fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of facing someone whose authority couldn't be challenged by ignorance alone. Brooks took a half step forward, the smirk fading further, realizing for the first time that their display of dominance might backfire. The street seemed to freeze. Pedestrians stopped mid-step, some clutching children, some pulling out phones, sensing a collision about to happen. Darius slowly adjusted his seatbelt, subtly moving his right hand closer to the lap, signaling readiness without aggression. Every movement calculated, every breath measured. His eyes never left Collins, calm yet piercing. You want to escalate? Go ahead. But don't think I'll flinch. Don't think your uniform gives you power over me. Extreme racism hung in the air like a storm cloud, every second thick with tension, every gesture a test of control. Collins' voice rose an octave. I said step out, now! His tone dripped with aggression, entitlement, and pure bias. Brooks' chuckle was quieter now, replaced with a glance that hinted at uncertainty. The two white officers, so confident a moment ago, were starting to sense that Darius's calm was a force they could not intimidate. The sheer presence of a disciplined Black Army colonel in full control, refusing to react to their microaggressions, unsettled them. Suddenly, Collins lunged toward the door handle, hand hovering over his taser, eyes wild, face red with frustration. Darius slowly, deliberately opened the car door just enough to stand if needed. Muscles loose, but ready. Stay calm. You've trained for worse. You're in control. They have no idea. His aura radiated quiet authority, making Collins hesitate for just a fraction of a second. That split second was enough to shift the dynamic. Enough for Brooks to realize that their aggression was meeting disciplined, unshakable power. Pedestrians whispered urgently, phones aimed, recording the tension. Dogs barked in the distance, a car honked, a newspaper fluttered across the street, all amplified, echoing the imminent danger. Collins' hand twitched, hovering near his taser, while Brooks' smirk finally disappeared, replaced by a subtle tension in his shoulders. Extreme racism, unchecked arrogance, and ignorance clashed with calm authority, discipline, and strategic composure. Darius exhaled slowly, letting every subtle movement convey control without aggression. His eyes locked on Collins, unwavering. You think you control this? You think your bias gives you power? Watch me turn your aggression into your own hesitation. The street felt heavy, charged, as if the world itself recognized the collision of entitlement versus earned authority. Every second stretched, every micro-expression cataloged, every footstep, rustle, and distant sound amplified. Collins shifted his weight nervously. Brooks mirrored him slightly, both realizing that their extreme racism and supposed power were no match for someone trained to face far greater threats. The tension was unbearable, charged and ready to explode at any second. But Darius Hunter stood calm, measured, a force of authority they had never encountered, ready to assert dominance without ever raising a hand violently. Darius Hunter leaned back slightly in the driver's seat, eyes never leaving Ryan Collins, the rookie cop. Collins, 28, white, tactical uniform crisp, veins bulging on his neck, chest practically vibrating with barely contained rage, stomped his boots on the asphalt. I said step out of the car, he barked, voice cracking with a mixture of authority and racial bias, the kind that assumes dominance simply because Darius was black. Beside him, Ethan Brooks, 32, white, partner smirk fading slightly as he sensed the weight of Darius's presence, shifted uncomfortably, arms crossing tighter across his chest, jaw tightening. Both men were clearly underestimating the storm they were dealing with. Darius, calm and composed, hands resting lightly on the wheel, exhaled slowly, letting the morning air flow over him. His posture radiated control, authority, and patience, a stark contrast to the rookie cop's brash aggression. Inside, his mind cataloged every twitch of Colin's fingers, every micro-expression, every shallow breath, every subtle movement of Brooks. They think power comes from a uniform. They think bias gives them control. Watch them overplay. Watch them hesitate. Watch them crumble when confronted with discipline and authority. Collins leaned even closer, inches from the window, nostrils flaring, eyes narrowing with barely contained prejudice. "Now!" he shouted, hand twitching toward his taser, every motion screaming entitlement and ignorance. Brooks stepped forward slightly, but there was hesitation in his movement now, a subtle shift in his confident stance. He could feel the energy radiating from Darius, a calm, disciplined authority that refused to bend under racial intimidation. The extreme racism in their actions was palpable, as if the street itself could feel the tension boiling like a storm ready to erupt. Pedestrians froze. Some ducked behind parked cars. Others cautiously reached for their phones, recording every microsecond of the unfolding drama. Children clutched their parents' hands tighter. Neighbors peeked through windows, and the faint hum of morning traffic seemed to fade into a tense silence. Every rustle, every footstep, every distant bark of a dog echoed like a warning signal. The world seemed to shrink to the space between Darius and Collins. The point where bias met unshakable control. Darius slowly unbuckled his seatbelt, just enough to signal readiness without aggression. "You want to escalate? Fine. But know this. Every move you make is being read, analyzed, calculated." His eyes locked onto Collins, unwavering, piercing through the rookie's aggression like a laser. Brooks shifted slightly, realizing that the initial arrogance they carried was beginning to crumble under the weight of Darius's presence. Extreme racism was on full display. Collins' trembling fingers near his taser, Brooks's smirk fading, but it was meeting something far greater. Calm, trained authority, and strategic patience. Then, in the corner of Darius's eye, he noticed the subtle vibration of his military phone, the stress indicator protocol triggering a silent alert. Every second stretched, awareness heightened, and the distant rumble of an approaching vehicle hinted at backup. Collins noticed it too, his eyes flicking nervously toward the approaching SUVs, and a flicker of panic crossed his face. Brooks whispered something under his breath, clearly realizing that the situation was no longer under their control. The extreme racism in their actions collided with the reality of federal power, and for the first time, the rookie's smirk vanished completely. Darius's calm aura didn't waver, but inside, his mind calculated every possible escalation: taser, pepper spray, verbal aggression, pedestrians, backup response, legal implications. Every microsecond mattered. Collins shifted his weight, hand hovering over his taser, clearly battling between racial bias-fueled aggression and the sudden realization that he was outmatched. Brooks mirrored him subtly, the realization dawning that their overconfidence, their entitlement, their unchecked prejudice had met an authority they couldn't intimidate. The street seemed to hold its breath, every detail amplified, the glint of sunlight off Collins' badge, the polished black shoes tapping impatiently on asphalt, the faint rustle of Darius's uniform, the subtle flex of his muscles ready to respond if forced. Pedestrians whispered urgently, phones raised, children held tighter, and for every passerby watching, the extreme racism on display was undeniable. The tension was so thick it could almost be cut with a knife, a charged collision of ignorance versus authority, entitlement versus discipline. As the distant SUVs drew nearer, Darius remained calm, aura commanding, posture unwavering. This is about control, not reaction. This is about authority, not fear. Every detail, the officers' smirks fading, hands twitching, body language betraying doubt, was cataloged and ready for the next microsecond escalation. Extreme racism, unchecked arrogance, and bias collided with unshakable discipline and authority, and the world around them seemed to vibrate with anticipation of what would happen next. Darius Hunter, still seated in his sleek black SUV, felt the subtle vibration of his military phone against his thigh. The stress indicator protocol had fully triggered, silently alerting federal command. The street, previously frozen with tension, now seemed to pulse with anticipation. Collins, 28, white rookie cop, stood mere inches from Darius, chest puffed, face red with barely contained rage, every command dripping with racial bias. His partner, Ethan Brooks, 32, white, tactical uniform pressed perfectly, smirk fading to thin-lipped anxiety, as he sensed that their ignorance and entitlement were about to collide with authority far beyond their comprehension. "Step out, hands visible," Collins barked again, voice cracking with frustration and disbelief. The extreme racism was palpable in his tone. The assumption that Darius's black skin made him an immediate threat, unworthy of respect, deserving of intimidation. Brooks leaned slightly forward, eyes darting between Darius and the approaching SUVs, the smirk gone, replaced by unease. Pedestrians froze, some ducked behind parked cars, some raised phones, all feeling the weight of a situation escalating into chaos. Darius slowly unbuckled his seatbelt, posture measured, movements deliberate, projecting calm authority. You want to escalate? Fine. But every move you make is being read, calculated, controlled. His piercing eyes locked onto Collins, unflinching, unwavering, radiating the power of a trained Black Army colonel who had faced threats far deadlier than a rookie cop's arrogance. Every twitch of Collins's fingers, every shallow breath, every tightening jaw was noted, every micro-expression catalogued. Extreme racism in motion. Suddenly, the distant rumble of approaching SUVs grew louder. The neighborhood seemed to vibrate with tension. Collins' eyes flicked nervously toward the approaching vehicles, and Brooks muttered something under his breath, their confidence slipping for the first time. The extreme racism fueling their aggression collided head-on with the undeniable presence of federal authority. Darius's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with their panic, highlighting the arrogance of prejudice against the reality of power. As the first black and white SUVs rolled into view, marked with federal insignia, a squad of uniformed military personnel, led by Commander Jenna Carter, 42, white, stern, efficient, emerged. Their presence was immediate, commanding, and non-negotiable. Collins froze, the realization hitting him that this wasn't a traffic stop anymore. Brooks's hands twitched nervously, body language betraying fear and regret. Extreme racism had placed them directly in front of someone trained, disciplined, and backed by federal might. Darius exited the SUV slowly, deliberately, movements fluid, controlled, calm, yet authoritative. This isn't just about a traffic stop. This is about power, authority, and respect. Collins stepped back instinctively, smirk gone, replaced by panic. Brooks mirrored him. The federal personnel surrounded the scene with precision, their gaze sharp, commanding compliance. Collins's taser hand hovered, but the awareness of the federal presence froze him. Every microsecond of bias-driven aggression now confronted the reality of accountability. Pedestrians, previously frozen, began murmuring, recording, and whispering. Children clutched parents' hands tighter. Neighbors peeked from windows, and the morning traffic slowed. Everyone sensing the magnitude of the situation. The street itself seemed alive with tension. The glint of sunlight off Collins' badge, the subtle shuffle of Brooks' boots, Darius's steady posture, the disciplined march of federal agents, all captured the collision of extreme racism with authority that could not be ignored. Collins opened his mouth, trying to regain control, but no words came out. Extreme racism, entitlement, and ignorance met disciplined power and strategic authority. Darius's aura radiated calm dominance. The federal backup projected an unyielding wall of enforcement. Every micro-expression, every twitch, every nervous glance of the cops amplified the tension, showing the raw collision of unchecked prejudice and the consequences of underestimating someone with real power. The moment stretched, thick with anticipation. Darius's eyes swept the scene. Collins, Brooks, pedestrians, federal personnel, every detail cataloged. He exhaled slowly, letting authority radiate with every controlled movement, every calm breath. Extreme racism, unchecked bias, and arrogance now stood exposed, dwarfed by disciplined authority and the weight of accountability. The street, the air, and every witness held their breath, watching entitlement collide with reality. The street vibrated with tension, every sound amplified. The distant hum of traffic, the shuffle of shoes, the faint squeak of car tires on asphalt, even the low murmur of bystanders. Darius Hunter, standing tall outside his SUV, exuded calm authority. Black Army Colonel demeanor, radiating discipline, control, and sheer unshakable presence. Ryan Collins, 28, white rookie cop, chest heaving, face flushed, stood frozen mere feet away. The smirk that had fueled his aggression, gone, replaced with the dawning realization that his extreme racism and arrogance had led him into a storm far beyond his comprehension. Ethan Brooks, 32, white partner, tactical uniform crisp, body tense, hands twitching, eyes wide with panic, mirrored his partner's shock. Federal agents, led by Commander Jenna Carter, 42, white, authoritative, precise, moved into the street with practiced efficiency. Their presence was magnetic, commanding, and instantly shifted the power dynamic. Collins and Brooks were now dwarfed, not by physical size, but by the undeniable authority emanating from Darius and the federal team. Extreme racism, the kind that had emboldened Collins to threaten, intimidate, and assume superiority over a black man, now confronted accountability in its most immediate and terrifying form. Darius's gaze swept the scene, noting every twitch of Collins's fingers, the nervous bite of his lower lip, the shifting weight of Brooks's stance, the way they tried to maintain dominance but failed spectacularly. Every micro-expression told a story of entitlement meeting consequences. Pedestrians, sensing the full escalation, whispered urgently, phones recording, children gripping parents tighter, neighbors peering from windows. The world seemed to contract around this single point. Extreme racism about to be exposed in real time. "Step back, officers." Commander Carter's voice rang clear, precise, and non-negotiable. Collins froze, jaw tight, shoulders stiff, hands mid-air near his taser. Brooks flinched slightly, realizing the command wasn't a suggestion, it was enforcement. Every ounce of bias-fueled arrogance drained from them in that moment, replaced by panic and disbelief. Darius remained calm, hands folded behind his back, posture perfectly aligned, every muscle relaxed yet prepared. This is what happens when entitlement meets authority. Watch closely. Collins, fueled by prejudice, tried one last attempt at asserting dominance. We were just," he stammered, voice cracking. Brooks attempted to back him up, but the words died in his throat. Federal agents moved with precision, forming a perimeter around the SUV, body language radiating control, eyes sharp, unflinching. Every step they took reminded Collins and Brooks that their extreme racism and assumptions of power had been not only wrong, but dangerous. Darius shifted slightly, hands adjusting subtly, radiating calm dominance. The extreme racism in Collins' stance, his chest puffed, voice aggressive, finger twitching toward his weapon, was now exposed to the light of authority. Every microsecond of aggression, every biased assumption, every attempt at intimidation had been cataloged, recorded, and was now being met with consequences he could not ignore. Pedestrians, some whispering, some gasping, some filming, were witnesses to the collapse of entitlement. Children, wide-eyed, clutched parents' hands, sensing the magnitude of authority confronting prejudice. Cars slowed, honking faintly in the distance. Drivers craning necks, absorbing the scene. The street itself seemed to pulse with the collision of unchecked racism and real power. Collins' hands twitched near the taser, but every microsecond of movement was met with the unwavering gaze of Darius and the precise positioning of federal agents. Brooks' smirk had completely vanished, replaced with visible panic. The rookie cop's aggression, once fueled by racial bias, now met disciplined authority that would not bend, would not hesitate, and would not tolerate injustice. Extreme racism, displayed in every command and threatened move, was now impotent, dwarfed by sheer training, authority, and calm, strategic power. Darius finally spoke, voice steady, firm, controlled. "You do not get to decide who poses a threat based on skin color. Step aside." The words, calm yet commanding, pierced through the tension, exposing Collins and Brooks' extreme racism to everyone present. Pedestrians gasped, whispers spread, phones captured the moment. An indelible record of entitlement and bias meeting accountability. The federal team tightened their perimeter, moving as one, projecting absolute authority. Collins stumbled slightly backward, his chest heaving, eyes wide with disbelief, realizing that his assumptions, his arrogance, and his extreme racism had led him into a corner he could not escape. Brooks, following suit, mirrored the panic, every muscle stiff, every expression betraying the weight of their errors. Every detail, the glint of sunlight on badges, the subtle shuffle of boots on asphalt, the flicker of phone cameras, the tension in the air, painted a cinematic, almost surreal scene. Extreme racism had collided with authority in a spectacle no one could ignore. And Darius, calm, collected, commanding, Black Army colonel, stood at the center of it all, the embodiment of discipline, power, and justice. The morning sun beat down on the quiet suburban street, but the tension radiating from the scene felt hotter than any summer heat wave. Darius Hunter, Black Army colonel, stood calm in front of his SUV, every muscle relaxed but ready, aura radiating authority. His eyes, sharp and unflinching, scanned Ryan Collins, 28, white rookie cop, and Ethan Brooks, 32, white partner, who were frozen in place. Collins' chest heaved, face flushed red, jaw clenched tight, hands twitching nervously near his taser. Brooks mirrored him, smirk replaced by disbelief, posture rigid, shoulders tight, fingers flexing involuntarily. Their extreme racism, once bold and aggressive, was now met with the crushing reality of accountability, and the humiliation was tangible. The federal team, led by Commander Jenna Carter, 42, white, authoritative, efficient, moved into formation around the SUV, each step precise, every movement radiating control. Collins' smirk had evaporated entirely. Panic flickered across his face, eyes darting between Darius and the officers. Brooks' body language screamed uncertainty. He shifted his weight, eyes wide, posture unsteady, realizing the power dynamic had completely flipped. Extreme racism, arrogance, and entitlement had led them straight into exposure. Darius's voice cut through the tension, calm yet commanding. This is not your street. Your authority ends where bias begins. Every word landed like a hammer, each syllable exposing the ignorance and prejudice that had fueled Collins and Brooks' actions. Pedestrians, previously holding their breath, now murmured in disbelief, phones raised, recording every second. Children clutched parents' hands, wide-eyed, sensing the gravity of the unfolding spectacle. Collins tried to step forward, chest puffed, voice raised, but a subtle hand gesture from Commander Carter froze him mid-motion. "Step back, Officer Collins, now." The words carried absolute authority, leaving no room for debate. Brooks instinctively mimicked his partner, hands slightly raised, shoulders hunched, posture betraying guilt and fear. The extreme racism that had driven them to threaten and intimidate a trained Black Army colonel now made them look small, powerless, exposed. Darius's gaze remained steady on Collins, unflinching. This is what happens when bias meets authority. Every action has consequences. Inside, Collins' mind raced, panic building with every heartbeat. I can't believe this is happening. How did I let it get this far? Brooks thought similarly. Regret and fear warring with his residual arrogance. The street seemed alive with tension. The clatter of shoes, faint car horns, distant voices of determination and justice. Even the subtle rustle of leaves amplified in the charged air. The federal officers began directing Collins and Brooks to the curb, hands raised slightly, as if the world itself was witnessing the unraveling of extreme racism. Collins' face twisted with disbelief and humiliation, muttering under his breath, fingers trembling near his belt. Brooks' smirk had vanished entirely. His jaw tightened, eyes darting nervously toward the federal team. Every micro-expression told the story. Entitlement shattered. Darius remained calm, body relaxed, hands folded, aura unyielding. His presence alone highlighted the stark contrast between disciplined authority and reckless prejudice. Pedestrians murmured. Some whispered. Others recorded furiously, capturing every moment of the rookie cop's fall from arrogance to exposure. Children peeked from behind parents' legs, absorbing the lesson that entitlement and bias had limits. An authority backed by discipline could not be intimidated. Collins finally opened his mouth, stammering, trying to reclaim some semblance of authority. I was just... His voice cracked mid-word. Commander Carter's gaze fixed on him, unwavering. You're done here. You have no authority. The words cut deeper than any punishment, slicing through pride and exposing the raw reality of extreme racism meeting accountability. The federal team began escorting Collins and Brooks to a waiting SUV, hands carefully monitored. Pedestrians watched, some whispering, some gasping, others filming, phones raised high. The street had transformed into a stage where arrogance, fueled by prejudice, collided violently with discipline and authority. Collins's face flushed with humiliation, sweat trickling down his temple, eyes wide and unblinking. Brooks shuffled nervously, his uniform pressed perfectly, but useless against the overwhelming presence of federal power. Darius finally took a step back, posture unchanged, aura steady. The extreme racism that had powered Collins's aggression, the entitlement that had fueled Brooks's confidence, now lay exposed, shamed, powerless. Pedestrians whispered, cameras clicked, children absorbed, and the air itself seemed to hum with the lesson. Unchecked bias has consequences, and authority backed by discipline and experience cannot be challenged by ignorance alone. Every detail, the subtle twitch of Collins' fingers, Brooks' shifting weight, the deliberate movements of federal officers, the reactions of bystanders, painted a cinematic, tense tableau. Extreme racism, once bold and threatening, had been dismantled, exposed and humiliated in full view of the world. Darius Hunter, calm, authoritative, and disciplined, stood as the undeniable center of power, a Black Army colonel whose presence alone had turned a potential disaster into a lesson in accountability and justice. The street that had been frozen in tension all morning now seemed to exhale collectively, though the air was still thick with disbelief. Darius Hunter, Black Army colonel, stood near his SUV, posture flawless, aura calm and commanding, eyes scanning the scene. His uniform, perfectly pressed, black tactical boots planted firmly, radiated authority that no rookie cop or partner could hope to challenge. Ryan Collins, 28, white, and Ethan Brooks, 32, white, now both flustered, hands cuffed by federal agents, faces pale and flushed with shame, realized the weight of their extreme racism. Every aggressive smirk, every biased assumption, every micro-expression of arrogance had been exposed, recorded, and humiliated. Pedestrians, who had witnessed the escalating ordeal, whispered amongst themselves, phones raised high, capturing every second. Children clutched parents' hands tighter, eyes wide, taking in the reality that entitlement, fueled by prejudice, carries consequences. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains and doorways, their expressions a mixture of awe and relief, finally seeing bias confronted head-on. Cars passed slowly, drivers craning necks, absorbing the cinematic scene of authority, accountability, and exposed racism. Darius finally spoke, voice steady and firm, carrying a mix of calm and authority that cut through the street's murmurs. Bias arrogance, and prejudice end where discipline and accountability begin. You cannot assume power over someone based on skin color. You cannot intimidate authority that is trained, prepared, and supported by the law. Each word landed like a hammer, exposing the extreme racism that had escalated this confrontation. Collins' lips quivered. Brooks' eyes darted nervously, both realizing they had been outmatched, outclassed, and publicly shamed. Commander Jenna Carter, 42, white, remained close to the two rookie officers, body tense, eyes sharp, making sure they followed protocol while absorbing the lesson in real time. Her presence reinforced the absolute dominance of federal authority. Collins and Brooks shuffled forward reluctantly, hands cuffed, boots scraping asphalt, the weight of public exposure and personal humiliation heavy on their shoulders. Every micro-movement betrayed regret, fear, and the shocking realization of how their unchecked bias and extreme racism had led them into a corner with no escape. Darius's gaze swept the street, noting every reaction. Pedestrians still whispering, phones raised, children wide-eyed, neighbors still peeking. Every eye on the scene witnessed justice in action. He shifted slightly, hands relaxed behind his back, radiating calm dominance. This is what accountability looks like. This is what confronting extreme racism looks like. This is the reality when ignorance meets authority. Federal officers guided Collins and Brooks toward waiting SUVs, their posture rigid, expressions pale. Extreme racism, once loud, threatening, and arrogant, had been completely dismantled, publicly exposed, and neutralized. Pedestrians murmured praise and disbelief. The lesson clear: entitlement and bias can never outweigh training, discipline, and authority. Darius's presence alone had forced this reality, and the federal team ensured the consequences were immediate, visible, and undeniable. Finally, as the rookie cops were driven away under strict supervision, the street slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Cars resumed traffic. Children whispered to parents. Neighbors slowly closed curtains, but the imprint of what had just happened lingered. Every glance, every recording, every whispered comment reinforced the lesson. Extreme racism has consequences, and authority backed by training, discipline, and accountability cannot be intimidated. Darius Hunter, standing tall, exhaled, letting the weight of the situation settle. He looked toward the crowd, a calm but stern acknowledgement of the chaos resolved. Extreme racism had been confronted, arrogance exposed, entitlement humbled, and justice had been visibly served. The cinematic tableau of the morning, the tension, the fear, the bias, the authority, would be remembered by every witness, captured on every phone, a permanent testament to the collision of prejudice with accountability. As federal personnel packed up, Darius returned to his SUV, posture unwavering, aura still commanding, leaving behind a scene where extreme racism had been dismantled in front of the world. The rookie cops had lost their bluff, their entitlement shattered, and the streets had witnessed a black army colonel take control with calm authority and unyielding power.